You're listening to Reignite, a podcast about not letting the past dictate our future. I'm MJ.
And I'm Matt, aka Stormageddon.
And we're happy to introduce our special guest, Jeane Harlot.
Hi.
Welcome, Jeane.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
We were so excited. I remember I started first posting about the podcast, and you just messaged me on Instagram going, "You like Mass Effect? I love Mass Effect."
Yeah, and I remember I saw you out and you had a Mass Effect hoodie on, and I was like, oh, I know that. Sweet.
So, Jeane, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself? I know you from the burlesque world, so talk a little bit about burlesque and nerdery and the kinds of things you do.
Yeah. So I am a pinup model and a burlesque performer in New York City. And I've been doing that for about 3 years. And yeah, I do mainly sort of like pinup inspired numbers, but I have a few nerdy pieces in there as well. So I'm kind of like a closet nerd. I feel like, from my social media, you might not be able to see right away that I'm a nerd, but yeah, I'm all about video games and all that good stuff.
Can I ask what your nerdy acts are?
Yeah, sure. So I have a Batgirl of Burnside act that I do. It's like Batgirl comes back after a day of fighting crime and then just eats a bunch of junk food. So,
so good.
A lot of fun. And then I have a Princess Carolyn from BoJack act in the work, so should be good. Oh, and I have a Sabrina the Teenage Witch act, which I just did, so...
Yeah, I just saw Jeane. We worked together in Metropolis Burlesque's Riverdale show, Riverdale Vixens show, which is a tribute to both the current weird-ass show Riverdale as well as the lore of the comic books as well.
Yeah.
Neat. That sounds really cool.
Yeah, Jeane is... there are several secret nerds in the burlesque community who aren't so secret in nerdery, but like Jeane was one of those people that I saw perform, and she just did these stunning, beautiful numbers, and she was so elegant. Not that nerds can't be elegant. But then, like, talking to Jeane more, I was like, oh, and you're a big-ass nerd. Okay, great. Awesome.
Yeah, totally. I feel like one of my fantasies is to, like, eventually start a Twitch channel where it's, like, retro gaming and I'm a pinup, and then it'll basically just be a chill stream and I'll just play a bunch of Stardew Valley or something.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I actually currently stream Stardew Valley with a friend of mine.
Really?
We play multiplayer together. So,
sweet.
Yeah, if you ever want to collaborate in the future when you work on that, I'd be happy to do that.
I'd actually watch that. So, Jeane, can you tell us your history with Mass Effect?
Yeah, sure. So I started playing it, like, not when it first came out. I was definitely late to the game. I started it, I'm going to say, like, 5 years ago. And it was on Xbox. I played, like, the original game on Xbox, which was buggy as fuck. It would freeze all the time, and I remember getting so frustrated being like, and my character is frozen into the wall again. Cool. Fuck this game. I'm gonna still play it though, because I got addicted to it. And before that, I was really into JRPGs, and so, like, my main game franchise was Persona.
Oh, nice.
And I was so into it because they were so good on developing the characters, and you would grow really attached to everyone's side story, and I couldn't really find anything else out there. And then I had a friend be like, oh, you should try Mass Effect, and I was like, gosh, like a US game, BioWare, I don't know if that's up my alley. Especially because it's so shooting heavy, so I was like, more about turn-based RPGs, but I gave it a shot anyway, and I got hooked to it, really because the characters were so well written. So, yeah.
That's awesome. Did you play all three of them consecutively, one after another?
Yeah, I did.
Wow.
I was hooked.
So over the course of how long do you think? 6 months or a year?
Yeah, I would say maybe about, like, 8 months was my playthrough. But I would get home every day after work. This was before all my pinup stuff and all the burlesque stuff. And so every day after work, I would just sit down and just dive into this game. It was so therapeutic for me at the time.
That's awesome. Yeah, that seems to be like a consistent thing amongst a lot of our guests, is like that Mass Effect was always some kind of escape, which I don't think I'm stepping out of line of saying is the same for me and MJ as well.
Yeah. Definitely. I
think
it's
like a comfort object.
Yeah, it is. Especially because I really started it up when I was pretty new to New York, and I didn't know a bunch of people here. So it was this space that, you know, I could go to and be like, oh, I know these characters, and they kind of feel like your friends in a way. So
They do. I relate to that really, really hard.
Yes, we know you love your space boyfriend. It's fine.
And I also love my space best friend,
That's true.
who BioWare would not let me romance because they're cowards.
I felt that way throughout the entire game. Like, when I started it, I was like, I just want to romance everyone. I love everyone on here. I want to sleep with all of these
Oh,
characters.
you were on the right show. You were
Yeah.
on the right show.
So I think that...
I was just going to say, when we get to our who we brought on this mission, I have a funny story to bring it back to Space Best Friend, so don't let me forget that, MJ.
I will try to remember.
Okay.
But first, I'd like to hear from Jeane what choices make her ideal playthrough.
So we're looking, and we have an outline behind the scenes. Oh my god, I'm spoiling it. We just want to know what choices you made. So, for example, the first one is the Rachni Queen. Did you kill the Rachni Queen or set her free?
So I set her free, yeah,
Okay.
because I played pretty hardcore Paragon. So.
Yeah, you're amongst your people here.
I tried to be a jerk. I really wanted to be this, like, I don't fucking care. I'm just gonna kill everyone. And then I was like, oh, but the morality of the situation. Okay.
Oh
So
no,
you gotta
my
prepare for-
feelings.
I know. I was like, damn it. I was trying to be tough.
The next question is on Vermeer. When you argue with Rex, did you fight him and did he die, or did you sort it out and then he was fine?
So we sorted it out, and I love Rex. Rex was definitely one of my main characters throughout the games, for sure.
Is he one of your favorites?
Yeah.
I mean,
definitely.
it's always fun to have a space badass on your side to be the jerk, so you don't have to be the jerk. Right?
He was like the tank and the jerk, but I felt like he had a soft inside, you know? He was a good alien inside.
A soft,
really
chewy
funny.
center.
And then on Vermeer, of course, the big decision. Only
Yeah.
one can survive, Ashley or Caden. Who survived in your ideal playthrough?
Caden did. Yeah, I really hated Ashley. She was definitely the worst character.
It's so interesting. A lot of, I think most of our male guests always diverted the other way, and I think that's
really?
interesting. I don't remember if all of them. I think some of them might have still picked
I
Caden.
think Chuck killed Ashley.
I think Chuck definitely killed Ashley. He also said she was the worst, I'm pretty sure.
She was just like blatantly spacist. Like,
Yep.
really? I
Yeah.
don't want you on my team. You're a horrible person. Die.
Who was your ideal romance?
So what I ended up doing, because I only had one playthrough of the 3 games, and I picked the most basic romance possibility, which was Caden, because I heard that the development throughout the 3 games, it was like worth the payoff at the end, and I kind of wanted to see it out. And then honestly, I didn't really like him, but then in that 3rd game, when you're like looking through the hospital window, I was like, yeah, Caden's not bad. I'm into it. But if I could have picked anyone from the game, it definitely would have been Jack. Yeah, for sure. Number 1. And I don't understand why that wasn't an option.
Yeah, that seems so odd to me. Especially since we've talked about how cavalier she is about sexuality, and not in a like demeaning way, but just in a like, you know, it is what it is, you know, I'm trying to get through life kind of a way. And so I was always very surprised by that.
Yeah, and maybe I filled in my own personal blanks, but I thought there was a lot of sexual tension between us, and so I spent so much of the game just like circling her with my character, being like, but I like you so much, let me into your world. Even though she wouldn't have been into that either, but I don't know. Jack is just so hot, so.
It's true. And it's funny you mentioned Caden, because in the current playthrough we're doing, so we're obviously about halfway through Mass Effect 2, but in the first playthrough, MJ and I both had this kind of awakening to Caden as a character, and I felt myself more attracted to his character type than I had been in previous playthroughs, which was interesting for me because I always considered him like a piece of wood in previous playthroughs, because he did on the surface seem pretty basic.
Yeah. That's what I think they really developed his character, like especially in later in the 2nd game and then in the 3rd game. He became way more dynamic. But that first game, yeah, just like empty vessel. But Yeah, it was good. I mean, I would also say, and I think I brought this up to you in our like side conversations, but I was super into Joker. So I also wish that Joker was a romance option.
Yeah, but you'd break him into tiny pieces.
I would find workarounds. We would have a unique sort of love and it would work. We'd have really good conversation.
Nice.
So what about the council?
So I'm trying to remember, what was the council
So you could
decision?
either save them or let them die, and then there would be a new council in the second and third games. So when the Citadel is being attacked, you can choose to divert forces to rescue them or ignore them, and they get blown up.
Yeah, I rescued them. Again, morality, I guess.
Again, you're in good company.
But they were a bunch of jerks, though. I probably should have let them die. But
I mean, we all came to the same consensus of we should have let them die, but our morality says otherwise.
I know. Damn it.
And lastly, Anderson or Udina to act as ambassador. Or not ambassador, but
I did Anderson. I was a big Anderson fan throughout the game.
Captain Dadderson.
Yeah, that's what we call him, because he's like your space dad. I am the only one who seems to have picked Udina because I just didn't want to be involved. Well, actually, I didn't pick anybody because I didn't want to get involved in politics, but not making a choice is a choice for Udina, apparently.
Standing
Sort of like
idly by is just as bad.
Yes, I agree. And considering our current political climate, I don't want to get into it because, yes, that's bad. I should know better. But it is what it is. And so it was.
I just want it on the record.
Yeah, okay, fine.
Okay.
Man, you know what? Now thinking about it, I kind of wish that Anderson was also a love interest. See, everyone in this game, I'm like, hey, I just want to connect with all of you. It's good. Except for the beefcake guy in the second game. I don't even remember his name because he wasn't worth remembering. It wasn't Jacob. It's the other guy that I think it was like a bonus download to have.
Oh, Zaid?
Zaid. No. Yeah. I could have done without him.
Okay, good to know. Kasumi, though. Kasumi was great.
Oh,
Kasumi
yeah.
was the best.
Yeah.
I mean, come on.
Amazing.
Especially you were telling me off air how much you love Japan. Like,
exactly. No, I had a mega crush on her.
Okay, are we ready for a summary?
Sure, go for it.
Shepard takes Jack back to where it all started. The Telton facility in Pragia. Pragia? Probably
Pragia. I think it's Pragia.
Jack wants it to become a hole in the ground, but along the way she discovers that her memories may not contain the full picture. As you wander through the abandoned facility, you find yourself facing off with several blood-packed mercenaries as you learn more about Jack's past. At the center of the facility, you find Aresh, another survivor of the Telton experiments. He and Jack were drawn back to the same place, but he wants to rebuild and find meaning in the torture he endured as a child. When all is said and done, the bomb is placed and the facility is destroyed.
So we're going to unpack all that in a minute, but first, of course, MJ, let's talk about our check-ins. I did check in with Joker, but he just made a brief comment about Miranda. And that was it. We're kind of not getting a lot of elaboration from Joker these days as we work through the loyalty missions.
Yeah, he just kind of usually has like a quip, and then that's it. I did not get the quip this time because I forgot to talk to him.
He was essentially saying, he essentially says something along the lines of, and I'm sure someone will correct me, "Oh, Miranda, this is great. Maybe she'll open up now." No, I can't even finish that sentence.
You know what? I did actually talk to Joker. Now that you said it, I did. I just didn't write anything down because it meant, like, nothing.
Literally nothing. I'm glad, though, that you wrote a note to talk about the email from Leslie. That's the person from Jacob's mission, right?
Yeah.
And I think that email is really interesting to get, especially reading it, because I feel like I heard her voice in my head when I read it to myself.
I'm not sure which character Leslie was. I imagined that it was the doctor, but I don't know that it was.
I mean, I mostly because of how well it was written to convey a woman trying to regain her facilities after the poison. Like, I just heard a feminine voice in my head because it was so well written in the voice of someone who was suffering like they were suffering on the planet.
One particular sentence stood out, and it was, "He can't take my words." Mm-hmm. Which reminded me a lot of victims of sexual assault and how it's really important to speak up when possible, because we have to stand up when we are not respected or when something is done wrong by us. And it's important to remember that your abuser, your attacker, cannot take your words.
Mm-hmm.
So that was...
And knowing BioWare's writing staff, I'm sure that was quite intentional. That was definitely not accidental.
It made me feel a lot of things.
I'm sure. It's funny you list Jacob here. I didn't check in with him. I forgot.
Yeah, it wasn't too much of a conversation. It was pretty much like a little chat. For me, it wasn't flirty, so it was just like, that's awesome. I got to say what I always think every time I walk around this ship. The ship needs a bar.
Does FemShip actually say that?
Yeah, like, this ship needs a bar. The next Normandy gets like a full-on lounge. And like the very tone of the conversation is, I just really hope we don't die.
I mean,
which I appreciate.
It would be a bummer if we died.
Yeah. So, and that was it for Jacob.
Yeah, Miranda had, and to the contrary, like when we first checked in with Jacob after the last mission, he didn't really have much to say. But when you check in with Miranda, it's a full back and forth about, her being grateful and being warmer to you and thanking you for everything. Which, again, my convenient amnesia of this game, as I haven't played it in a while, was really satisfying to kind of have that conversation. But I had in the back of my brain the meta of, I do not want to romance Miranda. Do not make me flirt with her. I need to navigate this. I just want to be friends.
I really appreciate how much she loves her sister.
Yeah.
She just loves her so much.
And you get to hear what she talked about with her too, which I had forgotten, that you can actually ask her like about her sister and like the things they share in common and don't. I thought it was all kind of really warm and pretty sweet.
Yeah, and Oriana apparently has a sense of humor, and Miranda admits that she doesn't.
Which is very true. She definitely does not.
So, and that was really it for check-ins. Did you remember to feed your fish? Don't forget to feed your fish.
I don't have to. Kelly's feeding them for me.
Oh, that's true.
Yeah,
you did make that happen.
Kelly Chambers and I had dinner, and she offered to feed my fish for me while I'm out.
I don't know who else needs to hear this, but don't forget to feed your fish.
All right, shall we move on to Pragia?
Yeah, let's do it.
So, Jeane, I assume you're not currently doing a playthrough, but you have played this mission before, and you said you refreshed yourself on it.
Yeah.
Was there anything that really surprised you about this mission when you first did it? I mean, I guess I can speak for myself in saying I was a little surprised how quickly Jack's story kind of unravels a little bit based on her own memory and how flustered she gets pretty quickly.
Yeah, and definitely you like uncovering evidence that shows that maybe she's misremembering some parts or she's filling in the blanks for her own narrative. I felt like in terms of Jack's character, she's so angry and upset at the world, and I think that maybe you're left to not know if she's making up some of the stuff in the past or just like misremembering it, but having it fuel her current anger. So I thought like the mission was really interesting to see like, maybe she's not being really forthcoming with all the details that she's giving. And then, what do I make of that? What does that mean to me in terms of how I'm going to interact with her as a character?
Yeah, for sure. I think part of it is also like we all experience our childhood differently than it's told back to us by our own parents. Like either because maybe they get it wrong or because we misremember. But either way, that's I feel personally at least a common thing that I remember. Like I'll tell a story that I've heard my parents tell, and then they'll correct me and go, well, it didn't actually happen that way. This is what happened. You just only remember this part. And I'll be like, really? I don't know if that's the case. And there was a lot of that going through this mission.
Yeah, exactly.
So I just also want to add in that one aspect of having suffered extreme trauma is that it messes with your memories. So that is another thing that Jack could be experiencing, is just also not having the full picture. She doesn't really know anything that was happening outside of her personal experience.
Yeah, and she goes into detail about that over and over again. And as we go through this facility, which is like there are quite a few fights, but for the most part, this is narrative. You know, you have some shootouts, but it's not as heavily structured around combat as a lot of the other missions have been. This is more about discovery. And like pretty much every other word out of Jack's mouth is "I was drugged" or "drugs," and which could also affect and impede the memory. And the fact that she was on a lot of drugs or being drugged all the time definitely would mess with that perception.
Before we push forward too much, Matt, who did you bring?
Oh yes, so I brought Garrus and Jack because you have to bring Jack. And I brought Garrus because I was looking at the screen and as if I were embodying Shepard, going, I haven't hung out with my best friend in a while. We should go on an adventure together. And I brought Garrus with me, who was equal parts horrified and disgusted and enraged. Mostly all negative emotions. But
yeah, he was just so upset throughout this entire thing. Every time you encountered something awful, he was like, "What the fuck?" He was so upset.
Oh, did you bring Garrus as well? Of course you did.
Yeah, of course I brought Garrus.
I also brought Garrus.
Oh, did you on the mission? Nice.
Because I thought he would be like a good mediator. He's a very good in-between where I think he sympathizes with someone being like really angry or passionate about something, but then like calming the situation down. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That makes a lot of sense. But yeah, like when you get to the first room with the first like strap in chair, he's like, "This is terrible. I can't believe they did this to people." And, like, I get it. It's terrible. But also, like, you've seen some shit, Garrus. But it's good to know that he's not desensitized by all the other things he's seen, I suppose.
Let's see. So, when we land on the Teltoon facility, we find out that their equipment is still kind of up and running. And Jack goes...
And like,
they built their equipment... Jack goes, "They built their equipment to last, assholes."
I love her one-liners. Like, she's the best. I was super endeared to the fact that as you're landing, she immediately is having second thoughts. And so no matter how much of a badass she is and how tough and angry she is on that shuttle, she was like, maybe we should go back and you can strengthen her resolve, which of course I'm assuming all of us did. But it was interesting to see that because up until that point, you've not really seen that out of Jack. Jack has mostly just been this one-line spewing, rootin' tootin' cowboy essentially character. And at this point, and like this is the first time you get one of the most human emotions from her of doubt that she had not really had at this point.
And this is where she has that one really good one-liner where she's like, you mess with someone's mind long enough and they turn into like an all-raging powerful bitch. Uh-huh. It's such a good line.
That is a good one too. I noticed that when they landed and walk out into the rain, none of them are wet in the cutscene.
They're wet in the cutscene, and when you go inside the facility, water is dripping off of them, which I'd never noticed before.
What I noticed was that in the cutscene, they don't get wet, but when the cutscene's over and it's just regular gameplay, then you can see the water dripping off of them. So I was like, well, that's confusing, but okay.
Sure.
I mean, this game was also made many years ago. Our water effect graphics weren't up to snuff back then. We'll have to look out for rain in 3 and see if it gets better. Yeah. Not that I can think of an opportunity where it actually rains in 3, although I feel like it must have, but I don't know.
I do feel like the graphics did a big jump in the third one. Because I remember that opening scene, I was like, oh, this looks like way better than the second one.
Yeah.
Yeah. We stumble across an arena, and Jack explains to us that this is where she was pitted against other kids. And she tells you that, like, she would be flooded with drugs to elicit a, like, favorable response whenever she attacked. So that way, they basically conditioned her to be violent.
Yeah.
And when, like, you respond and Garrus responds being like, what the fuck? She's just like, I loved it. And I'm just like, did you? I don't think you did. I think you're full of shit.
Yeah. And what's really interesting also is there's, I think, a small holographic vid after this, too, where one of the doctors reports on it, or one of the guards. And she puts it as she was pitted against these kids because she was the underling and like that everyone was out to get her. But the perspective quickly becomes she was being tested against the other kids So yeah, I think it's really interesting at this point, though, with the arena, that there's also some stuff you can interact with from the perspective of the folks in the facility, and it's when the narrative that Jack was being tortured and was the focus of torture gets unraveled a little, because it actually starts to appear like Jack was the prize. Like, they were testing the other kids so that Jack would survive and that Jack could be the best Biotic there.
Yeah, she finds out that they're doing special testing on other kids and they all die from the testing, and then they decide not to perform the same tests on her because they don't want to lose her the way they lost their test subjects.
And for Jack, that's really disheartening, because as far as her perspective was concerned, she was the worst. Like, she had it the worst, and that they couldn't possibly be trying to protect her because everything was so bad.
Yeah, I mean, she definitely had it bad, and I don't want any part of this conversation to somehow stray into she didn't have it as bad as others.
Of course not. Yeah.
I just want to make sure that we're like, it was bad for everyone, and everyone suffered.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's just interesting that her perspective is changing, and so she's freaking out about it, even though, of course, at the end of the day, everyone was still in bad shape, and it was still a poorly managed, mistreated facility.
Yeah. And she also finds out... I'm sorry. Go ahead, Jeane.
Oh, no. And I was just going to say, like, it's just adding on from her anger, and now she feels guilty that all these other kids died just so she could be stronger, and so she wouldn't have any of this. So I think it's, it's just like adding fuel to the fire.
Yeah, and I don't think Jack has a lot of experience with remorse.
No, for sure not.
Like, what is this feeling?
It's probably very confusing for her.
Yeah, completely. And what's interesting about the setup of this mission is that it's string of narrative, a fight, a string of narrative, and then another fight, and then it kind of resolves after that. And like the fights, so you're fighting the Blood Pack, because it's got to be one of the three major gangs in this game, because that's who we're fighting all the time. And so, of course, the Blood Pack are the Vorcha, and usually led by Krogans. And I felt the combat in this section was pretty straightforward for me. I'm high enough level that I'm not really struggling with charging and using a shotgun, and none of these characters, like the occasional flamethrower was a pain in the ass, but beyond that, like, it wasn't particularly difficult fights, even the quote-unquote boss fight when you engage with the Krogan running the show.
Yeah. After we find out that the kids started the riot, we encounter a fresh kill. So there's a dead Varen that none of us killed.
Right.
That's how we find out that there are strangers in the facility and we're going to be attacked. And I'm very amused that Garrus is just legit mad when you walk into the morgue. He's just, like, still so angry. It's like, buddy, this happened a while ago. You can calm down for a second.
Yeah.
I know, he was, like, so emotional through this whole, quest into this. It's like, Garrus, what's wrong with you?
He's a dad. Like,
yeah.
So
he
true.
has the dad, like, the makings of a dad.
Yeah.
He cares about children, and he wants to keep people safe, and I don't know, it's very bad for him.
Yeah, and it's funny too, because you point out, like, that is an interesting structure that up until this point we haven't really seen. Is like, we kill a bunch of Varen and then move on to the next room where there are more Varen dead that we did not kill, and so it's like, okay, something's going on. Yeah, not the usual, hey, we're bad guys, we were just hiding, but now you're here, so we're gonna fight you. Although it's sort of that still, but at least we get kind of a warning this time.
Jack refuses to believe that as bad as she suffered, there was even worse happening. And as we said, we don't want to negate her suffering, but we would like for her to see that at least she's not alone.
Yeah.
There are people that she can turn to and, like, share an experience with. And that, in my experience, it makes it makes the memory easier to live with when you have someone to kind of share that weight with.
Yeah, and she almost doesn't take it that way at first, though. She almost feels offended or like she takes it so personally that this other, like, she's in denial. Like, nobody could have had it worse than me. Like, I had it the worst. And she eventually comes around to understanding and moving through that. But at first, it's very much like They couldn't have had it worse. I had it the worst. Like, I was terrible. Me. It was all my suffering. And I'm not trying to downplay it. I'm just saying, like, there's almost this sense of twisted pride in being treated the worst in this place because of how fucked up everything was.
Well, yeah, because it means that she survived. And
Right.
if she can survive that, she can survive anything.
And her survival is really tied to her identity, too, you know?
Yeah. And she's having really complicated PTSD feels.
Which, like, I hadn't even thought of that correlation. But of course, like, to the armed service and PTSD that you might feel there, like, there must be a similarity to that, you know, especially when you've been through hell in any kind of situation. You know, it's not even just the armed forces, but anyone can experience PTSD if they're brought back to situations similar to something they've suffered before. And I would hate to put anybody through it. And to this extreme, it seems even worse, of course, because not only is it her reliving this experience, but then through the notes of doctors, guards, and other people, the experience doesn't even measure up with what she remembers, and that there's even more to it than what she thought.
I mean, I think even looking at Jack's, like, greater story after all this happened, her whole life was faced with so much similar trauma, because then she, like, gets kidnapped onto that pirate ship, and then if you start to romance her, because I played as a femshep, so I couldn't do it, but I read the whole romance option if you could. And so she goes into detail how she was also raped and tortured by another group that kidnapped her. So her entire life, she's going into these, like, horrendous situations where she's just being, like, abused over and over again. So, which I also think was so strange, because if you do end up romancing her as a male shep, like, her character at the end is just so openly like, oh, I guess I'll let my guard down and I'll let you love me. And it was so out of character for her. I was like, no, why would she ever be like that?
Yeah, no.
I don't know. It's definitely playing into, like, the male audience.
For sure.
Yeah. But also a condensed timeline.
Sure.
Yeah,
like, because
definitely.
it's not hard to believe that Jack might experience that with Shepard if they bond, but it definitely, because of something we constantly talk about, how it is impossible to tell how much time passes in this game. Like, if this took place over years, like, it wouldn't be that strange or out of character for Jack to do that, I think. But the fact that it feels like weeks or less, that it does seem just kind of like a switch flips, and that's a little odd, for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Let's talk about Arash.
Yeah. What Mass Effect does really well is bringing characters into the narrative that you have zero context for, and then can immediately understand what they're feeling and what they're going through, especially the more erratic characters, as Arash is, who clearly has seen some things and has some damages based on his experience, of course, as well at this facility. And, like, a lot of his exposition is pretty enrapturing. I never felt like it was an exposition dump. It did feel very much like this is a tortured person who's opening up to you because he has no reason to have his guard up for anything.
Yeah. Arash is another survivor, and he tells us this story about how the riot was started by the other kids, and then Jack got out during it. So it was basically a free-for-all, and he got knocked out, and when he woke up, everybody was dead and Jack was gone. So he went the opposite direction from Jack, but also probably because he did not experience the later trauma that Jack experienced. Like, as Jeane was saying, Jack experienced trauma after trauma after trauma once getting off the Telton facility, and that could also be because the way that she moves through the world as a femme presenting person puts her at disadvantage, whereas Arash, as a masculine presenting person, wouldn't have found himself in necessarily the same scenarios. Or, I don't want to say wouldn't have, but it is not likely in this narrative, I think. Like, the way that Mass Effect and BioWare tell stories, I don't think that is a narrative they would have gone with.
Yeah, I definitely think there's some meat to that, too. I mean, even if you think, like, when she got free, I think it's implied that she still had her hair and was very femme presenting. And then it wasn't until later in her storyline where she joins a cult. I think she joins the cult and then she shaves her head.
Yeah, she said she kept the haircut.
Yeah, so she strips away like her, feminine presenting attributes. So yeah, I definitely think that just goes hand in hand with her maybe encountering some obstacles that he didn't have.
For sure.
Yeah.
Well, what's interesting is I play with the DLC alternate costume for Jack, which is like these badass sunglasses and a vest and like baggy like parachute pants. I think the pants might be the same, but like which even makes her seem more masked than the very vulnerable outfit that is her default outfit, which is some conveniently placed straps, her tattoos, and the pants. And so that's, I just find that, first of all, I like the way that outfit looks, especially based on her character. Like her wearing sunglasses and throwing one-liners just seems to improve the quality of the experience.
Jack wearing sunglasses indoors at all times makes so much sense.
So much sense.
It's so silly.
But going back to Aresh, what's really interesting about Aresh's story is that while they had different experiences both in the facility and outside the facility, Aresh also has a different perspective. He wants to get the facility back up and running, but do it right, like not torture people.
I don't think that was the implication.
Or maybe just wanted to get it back up and running because he wanted to be at the top of the food chain at something that destroyed him when he was a kid.
I think that's more what was happening. He wanted to understand what had been done to him. Mm-hmm. Everything we went through must have been worth something, is something that he says. And I think that by restarting the Telton facility, he wants to do the same thing that they did, just so he can understand like how they could do it by doing it himself.
Yeah. And of course, Jack does not really react well to that, and biotics him pretty much into the floor and is ready to pull the trigger on him. I will assume this is the only major decision you get to make along this, that we all took the Paragon route of essentially talking Jack out of her tree, yeah?
Actually, I didn't. Really? I let Jack kill him.
Wow.
Yeah. I sympathized with her so much. I was just like, yeah, this facility's fucked up. You can kill him.
Interesting. I mean, I get that for sure.
Yeah, the facility is definitely fucked up, and it's definitely, like, bullshit that he wants to restart it. But I just felt like he was mentally ill. And
yeah, I definitely got that impression also. And then I don't remember what made me think of it, but I kept thinking that he was just a pawn of someone else trying to reopen the facility. I kept being like, oh, he's under the elusive man or something. And that was, like, my impression of it.
You know what? I wouldn't fucking put it past him. Like, that is a valid perspective.
We talk quite a bit about how much we hate the elusive man on this show, because he's a conniving son of a bitch.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, and then what's interesting here after this point is that you can choose to either just blow up the facility immediately, which will cut to the cutscene that we're going to talk about in a minute, or you can stay in that place and talk to Jack about her day-to-day. And it's, I felt at least, a very vulnerable moment. Like, there's not a lot of aggression when you get the tour, essentially, of her room in the facility. It's pretty haunting and very open, very honest.
Yeah, she talks about her experience lying in bed and how sometimes she flashes back to being strapped down to the bed. She talks about how she would see the kids through her window, which she now knows was only one way. And
yeah, the one that really stuck with me is when she talks about her writing desk that was her best friend that she used for everything and would even cry underneath it. Like, when she says that, like, her voice kind of hitches a little bit and, like, it just kind of punches you right in the stomach.
Yeah. And she also talks about her first kill because,
it's Jack.
Baby's first kill.
And then after you go through that part, then you get the cutscene where they're flying off on the shuttle while Jack is playing with the detonator. And my favorite moment is the lack of words. Jack looks at Shepard, kind of smirks, and then Shepard just bangs on the door. They pick up speed as she presses the button. Like, I love that moment of communication without any words. It's very Jack and Shepard, especially as their relationship develops in this game and in the third one. And I really love that cutscene.
It's so satisfying.
It was good. I was really pleased with the overall like arc of this mission because unlike Gift of Greatness, for example, it was satisfying. Like it had that bittersweet that BioWare likes to give us, but it was satisfying because the message ultimately became your past doesn't own you. Mm-hmm. And I think that's a really important message.
Yeah. Well, and also I think what's done here is it doesn't feel gratuitous. Like, of course it's gratuitous. Like, the idea is that Jack really suffered, but also these other kids suffered. But, like, we're not constantly plagued with imagery of it. Jack tells us about it, and the scientists and the guards talk about it in the vids. But no, there's, like, we don't see the children. There are never videos of the children.
Yeah.
And that's what I mean by it doesn't feel gratuitous. Like, it's enough to create a tragic story and convey this tragedy without inundating us with imagery that wouldn't be necessary to get the message across. They were able to do it with words, which I think is very powerful.
Yeah.
I kept thinking there's a lot of similarities. It made me think of the last part of Last of Us, where you're going through a facility and you're only picking up little hints and clues from like audio recordings or from messages. So you're kind of piecing together your own story in a sense, or you're trying to figure out what's truth and what's not truth. Like even for Jack, they're saying, if I'm remembering correctly, you can't really tell if she purposely kills all the kids once, if they're rioting and then she's with them and then her powers go out of control, or whether they were attacking her and she defended herself. I feel like I remember that being unclear. But then you kind of decide, you determining based off the clues left behind what really happened.
Yeah, I think I always got the impression that in the frenzy, she was under the impression that she was a target no matter what. Mm-hmm. And like if she is a small child who is scared and trying to run away, whether or not she was actually being attacked by everyone, it's easy to see how she could see that and would react accordingly.
Yeah, and not be able to control her powers.
For sure.
Just, like, intense emotion.
Yeah, she's kind of the incredible Biotic Hulk.
Yeah.
Which I feel like I made that comment in the mission where when we are given Jack, which had its own problems. Are we ready to move on to the final cutscene of this mission?
Yeah.
So this mission, this moment happening, I thought happened after Miranda's mission. I forgot it happens after. I think you have to have done both of theirs.
It happens when you do both. Yeah.
Yeah. So whoever you do second, this happens, which is the fight between Miranda and Jack in Miranda's office, where Jack wants Miranda to admit they had done wrong by her, which they had, of course. And, Miranda pretty much saying, "Oh, they were a rogue base. We have nothing to do with that." And it's essentially a classic cat fight, which I really hate. I do appreciate the character dynamics, that at least the dialogue is written in a way where you could imagine these two characters going at it, but it seemed a little superfluous, like, other than just in the way I think it was framed. Like, I get why they want to do it, and I get the narrative focus. Like, of course they would hate each other. That makes sense. Especially since for Male Shep, they're the two main love interests, blah, blah, blah. It just felt a little degrading to me. I get what they're trying to convey from the story, but it just seemed a little cheap.
But also, there was what Joker says when he first tells you that they're about to get into it.
Yeah.
And you're just like, okay, I'll handle it. And he goes, take pictures.
Oh no, my God.
Go away, you little creep.
Joker. I mean, we do know that, it's not a surprise that Joker is sometimes problematic. So, like, I get in line with his character why they had that, but it does, again, add to the cheapness of that moment.
Yeah, it was very much of, like, pick sides. Like, which one do you want to romance more? This is your opportunity. It seemed really cheap. Yeah.
Yeah. Jack says something that I agreed with. At least I think Jack said it. I wrote it down. Fuck your feelings.
Yeah. Well, because Shepard chimes in,
yeah.
I feel like, and yeah.
That's valid. That is a very valid point of view. I did diplomacy my way through this entire interaction.
Same. I got them to remember the mission at hand, to wait to kill each other to after, and then Jack says one of the most disgusting things I ever heard. Or no, actually it was Miranda, talking about how she can't wait to fillet her alive after the mission. And I was like, come on.
It was Jack.
Oh, was that Jack? Was it Jack?
Yeah.
Okay. still, it's like, come on, stop. Ew.
Can't stop, won't stop.
Won't
Can't
stop.
stop, won't stop. Not while Miranda is with Cerberus, because honestly, Jack is right throughout this whole thing.
Oh, yeah, of course. I mean, and also, again, with meta gamer eyes, since I've played this game so many times, I know that Miranda, for a while at least, couldn't be trusted, and same for Jacob, and all of Cerberus, especially the elusive man. So, like, if we're talking about people doing terrible things, you're damn right Jack is right. So, yeah, so that's Jack's mission. We still have some other stuff to get through, but thank you, Jeane Harlot, for discussing this mission with us.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
And we'll get you your shout outs, but first, as always, we have our fandom corner, which
Yeah.
MJ
So-
worked double time, triple time on this time.
I did? No, I
Well,
didn't.
I mean, there are several things.
No, there's one thing.
Or is it just
Those are
several
notes
points?
about the thing.
All
If you
right.
read the thing, Matt.
Look, it's way more entertaining for our audience for me to make mistakes. So why stop now?
Listeners, this is what I put up with. I make an outline. He waits to the last minute. Doesn't
Yeah.
actually read it. This is my life. So for Fandom Corner, I'm bringing you a shop on Etsy called Fresh and Geeky, and Fresh and Geeky by Scarlett Hocher, whatever.
Sure.
She makes fandom scent inspirations.
Oh, that's cool.
So there are currently 4 Mass Effect inspiration scents available. There used to be more. And I am very sad I did not move on that Garrus perfume while I had the chance.
Oh my
course.
god,
So
what would
hopefully-
Garrus smell like?
Don't remember, but I remember being like, ooh, nice. But I can tell you what Kasumi would smell like.
What would Kasumi smell like?
This perfume, inspired by Kasumi's love for Keiji, will have you falling in love at first whiff. Main notes of cherry blossom fill the air with hints of lilies, freesia, and sandalwood. A truly fresh and romantic set, perfect for a date or a stroll through the park, and perhaps, most importantly, light enough that Kasumi wouldn't give herself away in the middle of a heist.
That's great. I love that.
There's also... What was that?
Oh, I was just going to say, I appreciate that Tali's scent is called Pilgrimage.
Yeah. The pilgrimage one is exotic notes comprised of lilies, patchouli, sandalwood, and a bit of musk.
You know, because breather suit.
Yeah. Saeed's is black musk, leather, and woods. And Little Wing, which is Liara, is succulent plum, lush berries, watery lotus, powdery white florals on a sandalwood
Yeah.
base.
Nice. Though you can read scent descriptions to me, and I still don't know what that smells like. Like, I don't have that kind of a sense memory for that stuff.
Yeah, it would be like kind of sweet and flowery.
Okay.
And for those of you that are a fan of BioWare's other project, there's a line of Dragon Age inspired scents, including Iron Bull, Josephine, the Warden Alistair, and King Alistair, because there's a difference apparently. Fenris, Cassandra, and Dorian. I bet there was an Anders, and it smelled like betrayal and terrorism.
Yeah, I feel like if Twitter user Dirty F and Hippie, who will be a guest later on this season, or maybe next season, I can't remember, is listening, she's probably already bought 4 vials of everything.
If there are 4 vials. She's running out, and I hope that she remakes them because I want them.
Legit. Well, thank you for bringing that. That's awesome. And something kind of unusual, which we
Yeah.
try and do for Fandom Corner when we can.
So the shop name is Fresh N, the letter N, Geeky. Check that
Go to
out on
Etsy
Etsy.
and buy all those scents. Do it.
Well, don't buy all of them unless you're sending at least one to me.
Yeah, send one to MJ. She'll
to
give
our
you
non-existent P.O. box.
her that we don't have for fan mail. Email it to us. I don't know. Can you send a scent in an email? No?
I don't think so. I don't think that we've achieved that technology yet.
Yeah. Shall we talk about what our next episode is going to be?
Yes, I'm really excited because it is Old Blood with Ian R. Buck.
Yep.
Who
If
is
you're on the Discord
our-
channel, you know Ian real well, as he never shuts up, and we love him for it.
Ian is our morale officer.
He is our morale officer. It's pretty funny.
He keeps
Also,
everybody-
like, whenever we've said or done anything either adorable or horrible, either way, he'll call us out on it. So tune in for that. We'll be doing the Old Blood mission. I am excited for that one. I remember really liking that mission, but again, as we've proven this season, I don't remember a lot of things, so
It's
we'll
true.
see.
Barely remember your own name
Again,
sometimes.
I would like, before we do our wrap-up, to thank our guest, Jeane Harlot.
Thank you. It's so
Thank you,
fun
Jeane.
geeking out about video games with someone.
Well, you're welcome back anytime. We will need guests for season 3.
Sweet. Everyone's favorites.
Everyone's favorite.
The third game.
Oh, yeah, everyone loves the third game. But why don't you take a moment to tell people where they can find you on the internet to check out all the stuff that you do?
Sure. So you all can follow me on social media. That's Instagram, and sometimes I'm on Facebook. But I'm under Jeane Harlot. So Jeane, and then Harlot, Harlot. So I do, again, burlesque performance, usually in New York City, sometimes down in Philly, and pinup modeling.
Awesome.
Yeah.
You should go follow her on Instagram right now because it's awesome. You will thank me.
Oh, thank you. And then
Now,
stay
if you-
tuned. 2020, I am planning to launch a Twitch channel and possibly a YouTube channel. So something pinup related and geek related. So stay tuned
Awesome.
for that.
We'll definitely promote the shit out of it once it happens.
Yay!
Baller. If you like what you heard here, follow us on social media at ReignitePod on Twitter, Tumblr, and Instagram, Facebook.com/ReignitePod, or send us an email at reignitepod@gmail.com. Rate, review, and subscribe on your favorite podcatcher if you can. It helps us get seen so other people can find us.
We're also members of the Certain Point of View Network. Visit certainpov.com to find more nerdy podcasts, each with a unique point of view. You can also find a permanent invite link to our Discord server, which I mentioned earlier, which is on that website. And then you can join in on the conversation like our next guest, Ian, does often. We chat quite a bit about all things Mass Effect and other gaming stuff, too. And there are also channels for all of the other shows, so definitely come check that out.
Matt and I do some other things. I do a podcast called Circle of Friendship, which is about the Circle of Magic books by Tamara Pierce, where we discuss friendship, threadcraft, and Briar Moss. And I do one called The Rob Thomas, No, Not That One, Robcast, where we discuss the works of Rob Thomas. No, not that one.
I always appreciate that in the plug, you don't clarify which one. You just say not that one. So it could be
It's
for
not-
anybody.
It's just not that one.
It's just
You
not
know that one that you're thinking of? It's not that one.
I, of course, have been Twitch streaming quite a bit lately. My Twitch stream is twitch.tv/DJ_Stormageddon. I've been doing a running series with Katie Bug where we replay Stardew Valley together in multiplayer. I also recently have been streaming as a horrible goose and playing some Untitled Goose Game, which has been a lark and a half. So definitely check that out. Stealing the slippers of an old man and throwing them in a river are a lot of fun.
It sounds like you're a terrible goose.
I am a terrible goose. It's life goals.
I'd like to thank Christina Red Spinks for our It's Okay to Be a Marshmallow t-shirt on Redbubble, featuring our fave marshmallow, Kaden Alenko. You can find more of their work at Chaos Does Art on Instagram. We'd also like to thank David Boyle for designing our logo, which you can also get on a shirt through Redbubble, and Dan Bull for letting us use the Mass Effect rap for our theme music. I'm MJ.
And I'm Matt, a.k.a. Stormageddon.
And I'm Jeane Harlot. We should go.
You're listening to Reignite. I'm Commander Shepard, and this is my favorite podcast on the Citadel.